Everyone, I am Vidya Oberpanwar, lecturer in Electronics and Communication Department of SJP and Trust Polytechnic, Nidsoshi. In this video, I am going to discuss about the important questions for the for the fifth unit of the subject Industrial Automation, that is Programmable Logic Controllers. The duration for this chapter is 10 hours and the weightage is 25 marks. So generally we will have one 5 marks question and two 10 marks question. Sometimes we can get extra question for 5 marks. Thus the weightage for this unit will be 30 marks. So the topics are simple. We will discuss the important questions of this chapter, that is programmable logic controllers. So first question generally asked is define PLC, and then sometimes this question is added with advantages or applications of PLC. Before we start with the definition of PLC, I want to explain about the need of PLC. In olden days, in order to control different processes in the industry, relay logic panels were used. So we know that relay are used as on-off switches, and on-off switches are used for controlling different processes in the industry. But the main problem with the relays were that the wiring was complicated, it was bulky, and if some fault is occurred in the circuit or in the process, that time it's very difficult to check with all the complicated wirings and find the fault and repair it. If the process is lengthy, that time thousands of relays are required to control the process. So in order to replace this relays, the PLC was developed. So let us go with the first question, that is define PLC, explain its advantages. So first we will define it, then we will write the advantages. So a programmable logic controller, which is denoted as PLC, is user friendly microprocessor based circuit that is used to conduct multiple and complex control operation. So by using a single PLC, number of inputs, even if it is more, and number of outputs to be controlled are more. So multiple functions can be controlled by using this controller. So PLC is a user friendly microprocessor based circuit. The important parameters or the features of this PLC is that a PLC is essentially microprocessor or microcontroller based. It has multiple inputs and multiple outputs. It functions according to the software program. PLC monitors crucial process parameters and control the process operations accordingly. The PLC replaces much complicated wiring by a single circuit. It can select the on-off state of output device. Analog output devices can also be controlled by PLC. The input to the PLC can also be taken from analog devices or discrete on-off devices. PLC have tremendous computing capacity, but at the same time its size is very compact. Here the input to the PLC will be in the form of sensors and output will be in the form of actuator. So many inputs can be given to the PLC and correspondingly many outputs can be controlled. So before I explain with the next question, sometimes if they ask that list the advantages of the PLC, then that answer we have to list it out. So PLCs are highly flexible. You can use PLCs for different types of operations. They have compact size and reduced cost, because we know that when we use semiconductor technology, the size of the circuits is small. PLCs are accurate, high speed, and they are reliable. PLCs can be reprogrammed easily and quickly. Data storage and logging is easier since PLC can be easily interfaced to the computers. PLCs can handle large number of inputs and the outputs. Programming of PLC is easier. So those were the advantages and definition of PLC. The next question which is asked frequently is differentiate between relay logic panel and PLC based control panel. As I have already told that the PLC is used to replace the relay panels. So we will go with the differentiation. So, relay logic panel uses large number of relays for the control operation, but in case of PLC based control panel, single microprocessor based circuits are used to control the operations. Then in case of relay logic panel, it consists of complex wiring, but in case of PLC based control panel, wiring is on the printed circuit board, which is minimum. Then the next point is that relay logic panel, to change the information complex wiring needs to be replaced, but in case of PLC based control panel, the operation can be changed by simply changing the software program. Then next point is replacement time and cost is very high in case of relay logic panels, but in case of the PLC based, replacement time and cost is negligible. Then next point is relay logic is very difficult to understand, whereas PLC programmings are simple to understand. Then next point is size is large and hence reliability is reduced in case of relay logic panel, whereas in case of PLC size is compact, as a result reliability is high. Next point for relay logic is that it is not easily portable, means we cannot carry the relay logic panel from one place to another, but in case of PLC based control panel, it is portable. We can carry this panel from one place to another. Then in case of relay logic panel, flexibility is negligible, and in case of PLC based, the flexibility is high, means by using the same PLC many types or different types of operations can be performed, whereas in case of relay logic, once the wiring is done, it cannot be used for other operation. Then the data storage and logging is difficult in case of relay logic panel, whereas it is simple in case of PLC based control panel. So in this way we can write many points for differentiation between the relay logic panel and the PLC based control panels. This question is generally asked for 5 marks, so at least we have to write the 5 differences. Sometimes they can ask the same question as a comparison, so that time we can add with the common points between the relay logic panel and the PLC based control panel. So next the question is asked along with the main question or as for 5 marks, that is state the advantages and disadvantages of the PLC. So here they are not expecting the explanation, we have to write only the statement, that is what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages. So just we will go with that. Advantages: PLCs are highly flexible, they have compact size and reduced costs. PLCs are accurate, speed of operation is high, and they are reliable. Then PLC can be reprogrammed easily and quickly. Data storage and logging is easy since PLC can be easily interfaced with the computers. PLC can handle large number of inputs and outputs, and programming of the PLC is easier. Next we will go with the disadvantages. So these disadvantages for PLC are that for small operation or 1 or 2 functions, PLCs are cost effective. If more number of operations are to be handled, then the cost of PLC will be less. But if only a single operation is to be controlled by using the PLC, that time the cost is more. Then PLCs use electronic devices and microprocessor. So sometimes they fail due to the environmental conditions, because number of ICs present in this PLCs are more. So if the temperature increases, because these PLCs are used to control the industrial processes, so but that actually the design of this PLC is robust. It will adjust with the environmental conditions or atmosphere of the industry. Then PLCs are not fail safe. Yes, sometimes it can fail. As a result, the process can stop. If the operation is never altered, PLC proved to be costly. If for same operation we are using the PLC, then it is costly, because that time we can use with other type of methods. So these were the disadvantages of the PLC. The next question, which is compulsory asked in the question paper, that is, draw the block diagram of overall PLC system, or sometimes it is asked for 10 marks. That time we have to explain the complete block diagram of PLC system. So even if the question is asked for write or draw the block diagram of PLC, little explanation we have to do. So we first draw the block diagram of the PLC, and we see that the different units are interconnected. Input module, programmer and monitor is there, CPU is there, then output module is there, and power supply is present. So this block diagram is shown in the figure. So next we will go with the functions of different units of the PLC system. First we will consider the CPU. So that CPU is nothing but it is central processing unit. The CPU consists of microprocessor and memory. The memory stores software program and data. The microprocessor executes software program with the help of the data stored in the memory. So we can call the central processing unit as the brain of the PLC system. Next unit is the programmer and the monitor. So the programmer and monitor is used to communicate with the circuits of PLC. Computers, handheld terminals and industrial terminals are used as programmer and monitor devices. So the best example is the keyboard used as a programmer, and monitor is the CRT display. Now what are programmers? So programmers are the devices which are used to feed the program to the CPU, and monitors are the display devices where we can see the display of the program which we are feeding. Then the third unit is the input and output modules. So the electric signal generated by the sensors and transducers in the process are given to the PLC through input module. So input module consists of the device which connects the sensors or transducers to the PLC. The output will be controlled by the output module. So this input and output modules are present in the PLC system. The PLC signals are interfaced to output devices such as relays, solenoid, solid state switching devices, monitors and displays through output module. Now the input and output modules also provide necessary electric isolation between the PLC and input output devices. Now here, for example, we are depending upon the temperature, if the output is to be changed, then this temperature is to be converted into electrical form, and then in the machine level language, because the PLC will understand only the machine level language, according to the program, this input will be converted to the suitable output, and depending upon that the output device will be activated. So the inputs to the PLCs are the sensors or transducer, and the output to the PLCs are the actuators. Different examples of the output devices or actuators are the motors, solenoid valves. Solenoid valves are nothing but the software based valves. Then solid state switching devices, displays, these are the output devices. Then the last unit for the PLC system is the power supply. The power supply feeds power to all the modules. The supply mains is AC, but the different units of the PLC require different values of DC voltages, which are obtained through this power supply. The next question, this question is also asked repeatedly in all the question paper, that is regarding the process scanning of PLC. So the question asked will be, discuss process scanning of PLC. Now this process scanning is just like how we read a page. So the process takes place in the same way how we read the page, that is from top to bottom, left to right, line by line. So PLCs work on the principle of scanning. Each operational cycle consists of 3 separate parts. Once again I am repeating, PLCs work on the principle of scanning. Each operational cycle consists of 3 separate parts. The 3 separate parts of operational cycle is input scan, program scan, and the output scan. Once again, 3 steps of program scanning is input scan, program scan, and the output scan. So let us first check with the diagram of the PLC scanning. So here we see the process of scanning takes place cyclically, means once the output is reached, again it will start with the input. So first scan is the input scan. So during this scan, input terminals are read and their values are stored in the input status table. The PLC will have the 2 types of status tables, that is the input status table and the output status table. The contents of this status tables indicates the status of inputs. So during input scan, the input terminals are read whether the inputs are in on state or in the off state. So if it is on, the bit stored in the status table will be 1, and if the device is off, the bit stored will be 0. So during the scan, input scan, the input terminals are read and their values are stored in the input status table. Then the next step is the program scan. So during the program scan, the user program reads input status table. Already the program is stored in the CPU. So the user program reads the input status table, executes the instructions, generates the outputs, and writes them in the output status table. So depending upon the output generated after the program is executed, the outputs are stored in the output status table. The next step is the output scan. So during this scan, the values of stored, whatever output we get during the execution of the program, are stored in the output status table, which is put on the output terminals. So this process, after completion of the output scan, again the input scan starts. So this process is a cyclic process, so which are shown in the figure. The explanation of this process I have given in the previous slide. Next we will discuss about the important features of the process scan. So the important features of process scan are: the input, program, and output scans are separate independent functions. They are not dependent on each other. So any changes in the status of input devices during the program scan will not be recognized by the user program until next cycle of input scan takes place. So all these three steps are independent of each other. The scanning takes place from left to right across each rung. We are using ladder programming, and we know that ladder program is represented in the steps or rungs of a ladder. So the scanning takes place from left to right across each rung and top to bottom rungs of the ladder. The scanning time for one cycle of the ladder is typically few milliseconds. Some critical safety points are repeatedly, that is every 0.5 milliseconds. So sometimes if critical safety points are to be scanned repeatedly, then scanning time will be nearly 0.5 millisecond. Next question, this is asked for 5 marks, is define ladder diagram with label the parts. We have to draw the ladder diagram and we have to label the parts. Now first we will go with what is ladder diagram and what are the different parts used in the ladder diagram. So ladder diagram or ladder logic is a type of programming used for PLC. Actually there are 4 types of programming languages used for PLC. Those are ladder logic, functional block diagram method, sequential function chart, and Boolean mnemonics. Once again I am repeating, the 4 methods to program the PLC are ladder logic, second is functional block diagrams, third is sequential function charts, and the fourth is Boolean mnemonics. So when we observe the figure, here the ladder diagram is drawn. The ladder program is one of the easy method of programming the PLC. So here we see that there are different steps, 2 vertical lines. In between these 2 vertical lines some symbols are placed, and these symbols are placed in the forms of steps or the rungs. So we will go with the explanation of the ladder logic diagrams. So ladder diagrams are specialized schematics commonly used for in order to document the industrial control logic systems. They are called as ladder diagrams because they resemble a ladder. So as in the figure, the ladder diagram has 2 vertical rails, that is the power supplies, and many rungs, that is the horizontal lines, as there are control circuits to represent. So in order to represent the control circuit, horizontal lines, which we call it as a rungs, are present, and 2 vertical power lines are present. The right vertical line, which represents the written path, sometimes is omitted or sometimes it is drawn. Ladder logic diagram are read from left to right, top to bottom. Rungs are sometimes referred to as network. So a network may have several control elements but only one output coil. Control elements are nothing but these are the input elements, and outputs are called as output coils. Ladder logic is the main programming method used for PLC. As I told you that there are 4 methods, but as the ladder diagram or ladder logic is simple, it is most commonly method for the programming of PLC. It has been developed to replace the relay logic. So following conventions we use when we draw the ladder diagram. The vertical lines of the diagram represents the power rails. Networks are connected between them. Each rung defines one operation. Each rung must start with at least one input and end with at least one output. A ladder diagram is read from left to right and from top to bottom till the end. This process going through all the rungs is termed as a cycle. Electrical devices are shown in their normal conditions. A particular device can appear in more than one rung. We have to write the same address. The same designation is used to label the device in each situation. So, if we want the same device to be operated in different steps, so we can use that. The inputs and outputs are identified by their addresses. Now this notations depends on the PLC manufacturer. So different companies manufacture PLC and they give their own notations or addresses to represent the control devices, that is the input devices and the output devices. So this was with respect to the question, define ladder diagram, write and label its parts. So complete explanation is done for this question. Now the next question, which is repeatedly asked, this is also a simple question and we have to write this in a short method. This question is asked for 5 marks. List any 5 symbols used in ladder diagram. So any 5 symbols which are used in ladder diagram are to be written. So the 5 symbols used in the ladder diagram are normally open, normally closed, special instruction, output instruction and the end instruction. So these are the different symbols which we use to represent the ladder diagram. So those are, once again I am repeating, normally open, normally closed, those are used for inputs, special instructions, output and the end instruction. So symbols are represented in the figure. So first symbol represents 2 vertical lines, normally open input contact, then normally closed input contact, then we have a special instruction represented by a rectangular box, then a circle or the bracket will be used to represent the output or the coil, then a general purpose instruction end is used to end the program. The language of PLC ladder logic consists of a set of symbols to represent control components and instructions, so which we have shown in the diagram. So the 2 types of inputs are there, normally open and normally closed contacts. Output are represented by single symbol. So this was all with respect to the explanation for ladder logic symbols. Next question, which is asked so many times, is about the programming relations in digital logic gates. So here we are going to use the ladder programming to represent the digital gates. So we know the basic gates and different types of gates. So by using the ladder diagram we can make the PLC work as logic gates. Now this question is, the answer is simple but it is asked repeatedly, so we can discuss here, and the same we have done in the lab, so it is easy for you people to write the answer. So each digital logic gate has one or multiple inputs, one output and power terminals plus V, that is for high, and ground. So first question will be, explain AND gate and its PLC logic equivalent. So figure we will show. So this gates can be 2 input or it can be 3 input. So we are going to discuss about the 2 input. So 2 inputs are IN1 and IN2, there is one output, that is out phi. So as shown in the figure, output will be dependent on input. So if any one of the input is low, output of AND gate is low. So when SW1 is closed, when IN1 is high, and SW2 will be closed when IN2 is high. So figure shows the series connection of switches S1 and S2. So when both the inputs are high, then both the switches are closed. Then the circuit will be completed and the relay logic phi will operate. So normally this logic relay supplies power to output relays. Now here this AND gate, we know that when both the inputs are high, that time only the output will go in high state. So it is a series connections of the switches. So first we have drawn the symbol, then the switch diagram, and then the PLC logic equivalent of AND gate. So we are using two inputs. When both the inputs are high, then output is high, and if any one input is low, output will be low. So next question will be asked is that explain OR gate and its logic equivalent. So we are familiar with the answer because we know that OR gate, if we are using two input OR gate, if any one input is high, the output will be high. So the explanation is given here. Then this is the symbol, then truth table, then the PLC logic diagram. So here first we are drawing the symbol of two input OR gate, and here when we observe the truth table, we observe that when both the inputs are high, then only the output will be high, and if any one input is high, then also the output will be high. Means only for the state that is both the inputs are low, that is 0 0, that the output will be low. So here the connections of switches will be parallel. So if any one switch is high, output will be high. Then the NOR gate and its logical equivalent is represented in this diagram. So we know that inverse of OR gate is the NOR gate. So when both the inputs are low, output will be high. So OR gate along with the NOT gate and its logic is shown in the figure. So this is all with the explanation for basically NOR gate, then XOR gate. So all the basic gates can be represented by using the relay logics, and this answer you people can write it very easily because we are repeatedly doing this in the lab. Then one more thing before I discuss with the next question is that if we get any sort of Boolean expression, that Boolean expression can be represented by using the ladder diagram. So two types of questions can be asked. Express the Boolean expression in the form of ladder diagram, and if the ladder diagram is given, that time that ladder diagram should be converted to the Boolean expression. So this type of questions can be asked. So there can be different types of question depending upon the gates, basic gates. Now the next question which is asked repeatedly, that is for 5 marks, is the register basics. So the question generally asked is the list the general characteristics of registers. So this question is also once again a repeated question, and let us go with the explanation of this question. So PLC register basics we can explain in this way. PLCs have microprocessors which contains CPU, registers and counters. These registers and counters help the PLC programming and its execution. So let us write the general characteristics of register. The internal registers are accumulator data, index, condition code, scratch pad and instruction register. They help the control arithmetic and logic units. The registers help the control arithmetic and logic units which are present in the CPU. Internal registers are not directly accessible to the user. External registers are located in the CPU's RAM. The number of external registers depend upon the size of the CPU and the complexity of the user program. The external registers hold variable informations. Different number systems are possible for reading the register contents. Commonly used number systems are decimal, binary, hex and ASCII. Registers are designated by the category. For example, HR10 represents holding register 10. So these are the important characteristics, general characteristics of the registers. We know that registers are temporary storage area. So this complete explanation is given in these two slides. Next question. This question is also asked for 5 marks. So there are 3 types of register present in case of the PLC, that is the input register, output register and holding register. So let us go with the explanation for the holding register. So what is the question is, explain the use of holding register. So this answer we can write. Holding register holds the contents of a calculation, arithmetic and logical operation. So after the execution of the program, whatever outputs are generated, so those contents are held in the holding register. So once again I am repeating, the first function or use of the holding register is the holding register, which is represented as HR, holds the contents of a calculation, arithmetic or logic. The position of the input and output and holding register inside the CPU is shown in the figure, which I have shown in the next slide. So first there will be input register, then there will be holding register and then there will be the output register. Holding registers are not directly accessible to the input and outputs. The signal data from the specific device is deposited in the input register, then it is manipulated by the microprocessor and the result is stored in the holding register, and which are transferred from this holding register to the output register. The output register then updates the output devices. So this is the diagram of the different registers present in the PLC. Those are input register, holding register and the output register. Then we get the important question, that is, explain single and group input register. So there are 2 types of input register, that is the single bit input register and a group register. So we can draw the diagram and then we will go with the explanation. So first I will explain, then we will go with the diagram. The input register is accessible to the input device terminals or ports. The input group register can accept inputs from 16 different inputs. One of the individual 16 bits can be directly accessed by one input port. So these input registers are of 2 types, that is single bit input registers and group input register. Group input registers are used to save the space, that is, in order to save the memory, these group registers are used. So a single bit input register can be connected with the 16 bits or 8 bits depending upon the number we require. Or in some PLCs, the input register can be a single bit. For each input, one input bit of the input register will be there, and in case of group, a group of bits will be controlled by the single input register. This means one input group register is used to receive data from 8 or 16 consecutive input terminals. In case of group registers, each input device corresponds to single group register bit. Now little bit complicated to understand. There are two types of input register, that is single bit and the group register. In single bit, if there are 8 inputs, then 8 separate input registers are used. But if we are using group register, then a single bit will be used to represent 8 inputs. So in first case, single input, single bit. But in second case, that is the group register, single bit will control 8 inputs or the 16 inputs depending upon the number of inputs. So this is the simple diagram of 8 input devices, and here we can see the status of different devices connected to the input register. Some devices are on, means the status will be 1, and some devices are off, the status of that register will be 0. So 8 bit input devices are shown in this figure. Similarly, the next question which will be asked is explain the single and group output registers. So the next question is explain the single and group output registers. If the output register is accessible to the output devices, the number of output registers is equal to number of input registers. The output group register can control multiple output devices as shown in the figure, which we will deal in the next slide. So the output group register is a set, and single bit registers are the single bit. So the holding registers are normal used to transfer the contents to the output register. After the execution of the program, what are the contents of the holding register will be transferred to the output register. So this is the diagram of the output register. So here we are using single bit output register. So depending upon the bits generated or the status generated after the program is executed is stored in this output register. So 8 bit we are using. So if the bit is 0, the device should go in off state, and if the bit is 1, the device should go in on state. Here I have not shown the diagram for group register, but we can go with the explanation. I have already given these diagrams in the notes. Next, very important functions which are performed by the PLC is about the timers. So a question compulsory will be asked either on timers or on the counters, because the main function of the PLC is that it will work as a timer or it will work as a counter. So let us understand how the PLC is used as a timer. So the PLC timer function, we can explain. This question is asked for 10 marks, repeated question about timer. So the timer can be on delay, off delay timer. So most commonly used timer functions are on delay timer and the off delay timers. These timers are used to control the industrial timing operations in welding, painting, heat treatment, and in the chemical reactions. The advantages of using the PLC timers is that the time profile is programmable or fixed. So we can program the time, whatever time we require for delaying the process. So actually timers are the delay devices. The timers are accurate and free of any shift. Once we program the timing, it is not going to change. So accuracy is more and there will not be any sort of shift. Timers are reliable and performance is exactly repeated. So repeatedly same timer we can use for different function. So first we will explain with the two types of timer, that is the retentive timer and the delay timers. So we will go with the question. Explain retentive timer function. So retentive timer holds or retains the current elapsed time when the sensor turned off in midstream. The process is running and in between due to some problem the process is stopped. That time the timer will go in off state and whatever time was elapsed or accumulated, that will be retained. So this type of timers are called as retentive timer. They accumulate the time. The timers need two inputs, which is shown in the diagram, which is represented in the next slide. So the first input is the run or the click, the timing, and the second is the reset or enable time. So here we can see the diagram of the retentive time function. So two inputs, run or click the timing and reset and enable the timer. This timer can be used to know how long the sensor is on during 1 hour period. This is because every time the timer stops, it retains previous value. Finally, the timer gives total or accumulated time. Now from this figure, we can see the operation. The timer is enabled or reset by input 002. It starts counting when input 001 is applied. The timer T010 retains its value when it is disabled. It starts counting from the previous value when it is enabled. Thus, the timing value is retained when the timer reaches its value, which is set for how much time duration the timer should change the status of the output. So when the timer reaches its value, contact 110 operates and energize the relay 500. These are the common addresses we are taking as an example. Then this is also called as RTO, that is retentive, or a TMRA, that is the accumulating timer. Next we will understand with the delay timers. So the question will be explain delay timers. So the turn on delay timers will be there and the turn off delay timers will be there. So delay timers can be on delay timers and this can be off delay timers. This timer delays the turning on. When the sensor input turns on, there is some time delay before the output, for example solenoid valve, is activated. So as already I told that timers are nothing but these are the delay circuits. It provides known delay to change the status of the output device. This is commonly used timer. It is called as T-on or timer on delay. It is represented as TIM or TMR timer. So when we see the diagram, we see there are two inputs. So This is the ladder diagram of on delay timer. The timer starts counting when run input is applied. After the set time delay, it operates the contactor 100. This contactor in turn operates the relay 500 for same output. Here we are using some valve, solenoid valve, software valve. So thus the output will be activated. Turn off delay timer. So this timer is opposite to on delay timer. When the sensor is on, the solenoid is turn on for some time delay. It is released after the specific delay is over. Turn off delay timers are not very commonly used by the manufacturer. So when we want to make the device to go in off state, this type of delay timers are used. Next, we will understand with the very important function which is not written in the syllabus, but it is repeatedly asked in the question paper, is about the jump function. So we are going to study about the jump function. So jump functions question will be asked, explain jump with return and non-return function. This is also one of the repeatedly asked question. So let us go with the explanation of the answer. So there are two types of jump function, that is jump with non-return and jump with return. Jump function is a branching operation. Branching means when we want to shift the sequence of the program, that time we are going to use this jump function. So jump with non-return, it is similar to the skip operation. It simply bypasses the certain portion of the main program. Then the next type is jump with return. So it executes the subroutine when jump occurs. So after execution of the subroutine, again the program will come back to the main program and then where the jump was initiated. So jump with non-return and jump with return are there. So first we will explain jump with return. So jump with return we explain in this way. Jump with return is used to implement specific delays in the processes. Same delay interval is required at multiple places. Hence it is written as a subroutine and executed with the help of a jump with return. So main program and there will be a small program which we call it as a subroutine. So when this instruction is executed, that time the sequence or the process of the program will be shifted to the subroutine. After completion of the execution of subroutine program, again the execution will be returned to the main program. So subroutine program is executed, which is used to save lot of PLC memory. So this is the diagram where now let us discuss with the question, explain jump with non-return. So we will draw with the diagram which I will show in the next slide. So before that we will understand what is jump with non-return. So jump with non-return allows to skip, branch or go to different portion of the program. The inputs of the skipped portions are not scanned. Hence the corresponding outputs is skipped portion are frozen in their last state. So diagram we will see. Observe that there is jump JMP10 instruction in the second line. Slide change. So when we observe that there is a jump 10 instruction in the second line, this means that jump to line label 10, that is LBL 10. There is LBL 10 on line 103. Thus the program execution will go from second line to 103rd line. There is one more branching from 101 line. JMP 10 in this line indicates jump to line label 10 or LBL 10. Note that there is no return to the skip portion of the program. Allen Bradley PLCs used JMP and label LBL instructions. So both the jump and label instructions must have same address. Now in this case it is 10 as shown in the figure. Note that jump takes place from line 2 if input 02 is on. If input 02 is off, then the execution will go to line 3 and no jump will take place. Similarly, jump will take place from line 101 if input 50 is on. If input 50 is off, then there will be no jump and execution will go to the next line, that is 102. So in this way the jump with non-return works. Now next we will go with the next question, that is explain jump with return. Jump with return is used to implement specific delays in the processes. Same delay interval is required at multiple places. Hence, it is written as a subroutine and executed with the help of jump with return. Subroutines save a lot of PLC memory space. The program consists of jump to subroutine JSR instruction. The execution goes to the label address. After the completion of the subroutine, execution returns to line succeeding the JSR instruction. The figure shows the jump with return operation. In the main program, observe that there is JSR 05 instruction on line 22nd. The jump to subroutine takes place when input 11 is on. The jump takes place to label 05, that is LBL 05. The label 05 is on the line 100. Hence, program executes subroutine located at line 100 to 103. There is return or return instruction on line 103. After the execution of line 103, program execution returns to line 223 in the main program. So this we can observe in the diagram. Next, we will go with the next question, that is about the counters. So question is asked, explain counter functions with an examples. We know that the PLC main function is that it is used as counters, it is used as the timers. So the PLC counters replace mechanical, electrical and electronic type of counters. This is again the repeated question which is asked for 10 marks. If it is for 5 marks, then we have to just define the counters, and if the question is asked for 10 marks, we have to write the explanation along with the example. So PLC contains up as well as down counters. Sometimes both the counters are combined in a single function. So let us define what is up counter and the down counter. This counter starts counting from 0 to the preset value. When the preset value is reached, some indication or signal is generated. Then this type of counter we call it as up counter. Then there is down counter. So the down counter starts from a preset value and counts down to 0. After 0 is reached, some indication or signal is generated. So this we call it as the down counter. So we can explain the working of this counter by using the example. So the figures I have shown in the second slide. So the block diagram of a PLC counter is shown in the figure. When the pulse is applied to the input IN01, the counter value is incremented. The counter is enabled or reset by applying a pulse to input IN02. The counter shown in the next figure counts up to 50 since its preset value is 05. The counter register is holding register HR15. Counting action takes place in this register. When the counter reaches to its preset value, the indication UC, that is for up counter 20, is on. Hence, here UC 20 indicates up counter indication 20. So the coil format is shown in this figure. Now note that the signal UC20 operates contactor 20 in the output link. This contactor turns on output 70. Thus, the counter function works in case of the PLC. Now, let us go with the very important question which is asked repeatedly for 5 marks or 10 marks is the PID control of continuous process. So, what is PID? What is the need of PID control and how the basic principle works and how the module works? We will see in this question. This question sometimes is asked for 5 marks or sometimes it is asked for 10 marks. This question can be asked separately. It can be asked explain the basic principle of PID control. Sometimes it is asked along with the module how the PID module works. So let us understand the answer to the question. PID control of continuous processes. All the processes or control functions are not continuous time. These functions or the controls are on off time. So here the control is achieved between the 2 points, that is on point and the off point. But there are some processes which are continuous. So continuous process is the one in which the output is a continuous flow. So such processes takes place as a chemical process, a refining process for gasoline. Examples of continuous processes are, it can be a chemical process, it can be a refining process for gasoline, it can be a paper machine with continuous output of paper into rolls. The control system most often used in continuous process is PID control because PLCs cannot be used for the continuous processes. So here a special type of control system is used and that is PID control, proportional integral derivative control. So PID control can be accomplished by mechanical, pneumatic, hydraulic or electronic systems as well as PLCs can be used. Many medium-sized PLC and large PLCs have PID control functions which are able to accomplish process control effectively. So let us understand what is PID principles. PID is an effective control system for continuous processes. It mainly performs two control tasks. First task is PID control, which keeps the output at a set level even though varying process parameters, which may tend to cause the output to vary from the desired set point. So, PID control keeps the output at a set level even if due to some process parameters they may try to change from the set value. So, by using this PID control, the output is maintained at the set level. PID promptly and accurately changes the process level from one set point level to another point. So, if we want to change the setting value, or sometimes if the output is differing from the set value, that time this PID controller will promptly and accurately change the process level from one set point level to another set. Let us observe the PID controller block diagram. So, this figure shows the PID controller. Basic principle of operation of PID controller can be explained by using this diagram. So, here we can see process variable, then set point, error amplifier, proportional block, integral block, derivative block, then there is a summing amplifier and the controller output is achieved. So, let us understand the function of each unit. So, proportional block control is there, integral block control is there and derivative block control is there. So, what is the function of proportional control? It is also called as ratio control. It corrects the deviation of a process from the set level back towards the set point. Once again I am repeating, proportional control is used to correct the deviation of a process from the set level back to the set point. The correction is proportional to the amount of error, but proportional control does not usually work effectively by itself, resulting in an offset error. So, here we get a error signal. Error amplifier is there. So, at the input of this amplifier, the process variable is compared with the set value, and whatever error signal is obtained, that will be given to the different blocks of the PID controller. The next control is the integral control. It is also called as reset control. It is used to return the flow to the original set point if there is change. So, in the PID controller, the added integral signal reduces the error signal that caused the output deviation from the set point. Once again I am repeating, in the PID controller, the added integral signal reduces the error signal that caused the output deviation from the set point. However, this correction takes a relatively long period of time. Then the next control is the derivative control. It is also called as rate control, and it produces a corrective signal based on the rate of change of signal. So, it is called as rate control. The faster the change from the set point, the larger the corrective signal. This gives up the faster action. So, the controller output signal of PID controller is utilized through a control system to return the process variable to the set point. So, this was all regarding the PID controller. Next question again which is asked on this topic is about explain the block diagram of PID module. So, we have to draw the block diagram, and the block diagram I have shown in this figure. So, here we can observe that the block diagram consists of PLC, input transducer, then PID controller, then process which is being controlled, then corrective device. So, we can see the block diagram of the PID module. This question is again repeatedly asked question. So, the explanation we will be going in this way. PID module used to process the data obtained by the feedback circuit. Then the PLC sends a set point signal to the PID module. The module is made up of three main control elements, that is proportional, integral and derivative circuits. The proportional circuit creates an output signal proportional to the differences between the measurements taken and the set point entered in the PLC. The integral circuit produces an output proportional to the length and amount of time the error signal is present. The derivative circuit creates an output signal proportional to the rate of change of error signal. The input transducer generates an output signal from the process being controlled and feeds the measured value to the PID module. The difference between the set point coming from the PLC and the measured value coming from the input transducer is the error signal. So, some sort of correcting device such as motor control, valve control or amplifier takes the error signal and uses it to control the correction sent to the process being controlled. So, in this way the PID module works. So, next we will go with the important question on the PLC, that is the basic number comparison function. So, this question is asked for 5 marks and 10 marks. If the question is asked for 5 marks, then we have to indicate the symbols that much only, and if it is asked for 10 marks, then we have to go with the explanation how the basic number comparison function will work. There are 6 number comparison functions used in the PLC. Out of 6, there are 2 basic comparison which are used in PLC, that is equal and greater than or equal to, means 2 functions are the basic number comparison function, that is equal and greater than equal to, and the remaining 4 are the derived function which use the inverse or combination of the 2 basic functions. So, the 6 number comparison function is tabulated in the below table. So, 2 functions, that is equal to, then not equal to, greater than equal to, less than, greater than. So, all these functions are the basic number comparison functions. Their equation, then circuit and the direct function is shown in the tabular column. So, derived types are there and then basic type is there. 2 basic functions, equal and greater than equal. By using these 2 basic functions, remaining functions are derived. So, to illustrate the above 6 number comparison function, consider an example. A is set of some standard numbers, say 142, and placed in the operand 2. The B is the number to be compared with A, will be placed in operand 1. Then the comparing the value of B to value of A, 142, is as below. Equal is true only if B is exactly 142. Not equal to is true only if B is 141 or less. Greater than or equal to is true only when B is 142 or less. Less than is true only when B is 143 or more. Greater than is true only when B is 141 or less. Less than or equal to is true only when B is 142 or more. So, by drawing this layout, these conditions are checked. So, figure So, these were all about the important questions of the 5th unit of industrial automation, that is programmable logic controller. In this video, I have covered each and every topic of this chapter, and we have to write the answers of the question bank based on this video. Hope you understood all the concepts. Study well because this chapter covers 25 to 35 marks in the final question paper. Thank you.